have all these songs in my head.
Don't wanna be a boy, you wanna be a man.
Just gotta get them out.
Michael, Joe, we all know that Michael Jackson is a very so we all know that Michael Jackson was a very popular music artist. So apparently Lionsgate would make a biopic that's about Michael Jackson. So now when it comes to my experience with Michael Jackson, while I wouldn't say that I'm the biggest fan of Michael Jackson, I will say that I am very familiar with Michael Jackson and his songs. Now when it comes to my expectations for this movie, now I will say that I don't really know what to expect from this. Since I am just familiar with Michael Jackson, I don't think. While I wouldn't say that I am expecting it to be while I am not expecting it to really be some amazing masterpiece, I am also not expecting it to be terrible, and in fact I am expecting it to be quite decent. To be quite decent and maybe even enjoyable. So now that Michael Jackson finally has his biopic. So now that Michael Jackson has his biopic, will this movie feel like a big love letter to Michael Jackson himself? How will this movie be bad? So bad it's unwatchable? Well, let's find out. And also spoilers for anyone who has seen this movie. So now let's talk about the story. And when it comes to the story itself, it is exactly what you expect from Michael Jackson biopic, where it's about unsurprisingly Michael Jackson, whom in the late 60s to like 70s, he was once part of a music group called the Jackson 5. But however, during the 80s, he has a music career. He has a standalone music career well because of some of his songs, especially Twitter. He becomes a glow. He becomes very big. So the movie show later on the movie shows how he was one of the biggest music artists.
There's no one like you.
So now I want to say that the big problem with the stuff is that the writing is kind of the writing sucks, where it makes the film quite predictable, where up to the point where it makes the pacing feel really up to the point where it makes the pacing feel quite slow. Since this movie has a 2-hour long runtime, and also it delivers, and also there is also the ending where while and also there's also the ending which is which I can which is which and there's also the ending which I had a lot of problems with because the movie ends with Michael singing bed. With Michael singing his song there. With Michael singing his very popular song bed. In a tour in a ball tour in London. And when the song ends, it literally says, his story continues, and that's it. So while I am not saying that the ending is terrible, Sensei now, Sensei now that this movie published was originally gonna be supposed to be this movie is probably like part one of two, but it's just that the ending isn't very good in my opinion. And but however I will say but I will say that there was something politics about this. There were some slightly enjoyable things about the story. Sure, the songs, and they are actually quite catchy and fun. Fun. But when it comes to the story itself, while it's not the worst one for a biopic, it is still but when it comes to the story itself, while I wouldn't say that this is the worst story for a biopic, this story is still a bad story for a biopic. So now let's talk about the visuals. And when it comes to the visuals, now even though the writing may be terrible, that doesn't mean that the visuals are as bad as the writing. And the visuals in this movie are actually really good. So to start off with the film overall the film overall has a very nice color palette where it can be a little, where it can look quite appealing, and also by the way some of the backgrounds can look quite and also some of the backgrounds can look quite nice. Can look quite nice. Where some of the backgrounds can look quite nice, and also is probably the best part about the visuals is probably some of the scenes where Michael Jackson himself performs on stage. Where the choreography is very good. Very good and nice, and it really feels like Michael Jackson being on a world tour.
You're the greatest of all time.
And also the film even has some practical CGI like on the monkey, and it actually looks quite good. But however, if I have to give a problem about the visuals, is that while some make for to look good, others can look a little bit blended. Others can look a little bit generic. While they don't look terrible, they don't look that specially do. But however, when it comes to most of the visuals, while I wouldn't say that it looks perfect, it still looks really good. And it's engaging as seeing Michael Jackson on the wall too. Now let's talk about the quote-unquote characters. And I use quote-unquote because they were people in real life. But however, while this may seem harsh, if I may take a moment and look at them as characters in the movie, they are honestly not that likable or memorable. So while I hesitate to say that all of them are insufferable, they are honestly just not that good. So now let's start with Michael Jackson again. So now let's start with Michael Jackson. So now let's start with Michael Jackson himself, who is well very popular, he really, who well he's a very popular, who well he's a very popular music artist in this movie. And there is also Michael Jackson's father, who he really wants, Michael Jackson and the other kids to continue performing music.
You're either a winner or you're a loser.
And there is also Michael Jackson's mom, who is a lot more nice than the dad.
You were different the moment you were born.
And there were also the other members of the Jackson 5. And there were also the other members of the Jackson 5. Check is the second kid, the third kid, the fourth kid, and the fifth kid. Whom the one thing they all share in common is that they are noticeably is that they were all noticeably older compared to Michael Jackson in like the late 60s. In like the late 60s. And there is also this music, but also with like a hat.
The tracks are made.
And there's for the other characters. There is Michael Jackson's pet monkey, who is well Michael Jackson's pet monkey, the other music producer who didn't want Michael Jackson to be on MTV. And there was also the doctor who helps Michael Jackson. Spoiler for anyone who has seen this movie. There was an accident with the fire on his head, and there is all. And finally they were also finally, by the way, probably they were also the people who are on the wall too, and some other characters. Well, but surely there isn't a lot to talk about them. But however, I will say that what is possibly the best part about them is the voice acting, and it is actually quite good. Good. Well, the best one is probably Jaafar. Well, the best one is probably Jaafar, Jason. Or at least that's what I think. His name is pronounced. Now here's Michael Jackson. Well, he really does a really good job at watching Michael Jackson, and it's really good that they got someone who has something related to Michael Jackson in his family, rather than some random celebrity. And also the other voice actors as well. They also did a very good job. Did a very good job. But however, as I said before, while I know that they are real people, but however, as characters in the movie, they are unfortunately not that memorable. So as I said before, while I am not the biggest Michael Jackson fan and I didn't expect it to be amazing, I did hope that this movie could be fine and maybe even quite enjoyable to watch. But however, after watching this movie, while it isn't catastrophic, it is still bad. Michael is a bad biopic that while may have some enjoyable elements, such as the really good visuals, some catchy songs, and some really good voice acting from people like Jaafar Jackson. It also has some problems that keep it away from being good, such as the very bad writing that delivered the story that's weak at best. Characters that are less likable when you see them as just characters, slow pacing, and a very weak ending. Now as for my recommendation, now while I do not like while I wouldn't say that I like this movie, I will say that the people who I recommend this to the most, how Michael Jackson fans, well they will the more you watch it, they will probably enjoy this movie a lot more than I did. But however, if you're not a fan of Michael Jackson or just don't care, then you're not. Then you are definitely. Then you're not gonna like this movie, and that's why I'm saying that this movie was bad and gets a 4 out of 10. As I said before, while I voted to go as far and say that it's the worst. As I said before, while I wouldn't go as far and say that this is the worst biopic, it is still a bad biopic about Michael Jackson.